You know, my real passion in life is helping organizations and individuals identify and unlock the inherent potential they have within themselves. It's a topic that I ended up doing my PhD on. And the key focus of that research was to try and understand what is it that really limits us from seeing and then unlocking this inherent potential. You know, when we are overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis, it's very difficult to imagine that it might be possible to do much more in much less time with the same or less resources, whether I'm in my organization or in my personal life. So part of answering that question is trying to answer the question about where's our bottleneck? What is our constraint? What's the thing that limits us from seeing and unlocking this inherent potential that's within all of us? And I tend to think about a bottleneck or constraint at 3 levels. The first one is the obvious one, which is the resource that simply do not have enough capacity to cope with the demand that's placed on it. So if I'm a manufacturing company, it might be one of my special machines, very expensive heat treating machine, and currently the demand on this machine exceeds its capacity, and we see that by a backlog of orders building up. But when we think about it from maybe a government perspective, what's the one thing that's limiting their ability to grow the economy? It could be as simple as the capacity of the road system. And how do we see that? Again, we see backlogs developing, traffic congestion. These are all very simple signs that a specific resource simply do not have capacity to cope with the peaks of the demand that's placed on it. From a human perspective, what tells us that there's some kind of limit in terms of achieving more of the goals that we're really passionate about? It's our limited attention. And a very simple thought experiment to do that you could ask yourself is it true for you that the number of things that demand your attention or could benefit from your attention always will exceed your available attention? If you say yes, then your bottleneck, your constraint, the thing that limits you from achieving more of the goals that is important to you is your limited attention. This to me is kind of level 1 of a bottleneck. It's the resource where the demand exceeds the available capacity. But there's 2 levels below that. You know, resources don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to be the bottleneck. So how do resources become bottlenecks? They become bottlenecks when somebody made a bad decision. We've either overcommitted them, we've put too much demand on them, or we've wasted their limited capacity by causing them to do things that are not needed now or might never be needed. So in the form of a manufacturing company, overproduction is producing parts to make the machine efficient, but it's not parts that are actually required by customers as such. And we often waste a huge amount of capacity overproducing. Imagine you're a software company. You should ask yourself, well, where's my scarcest resource? It might be your top developers that are responsible for both fixing the bugs in the current version and developing new functionality. And they're already working 12, 14 hours. So where are they wasting their capacity? Simple question could be, how much of all the functionality in your software are users actually using? And often I'm told it might be only 20 or 30%. That means that they're wasting up to 70% of their capacity producing stuff that's not needed now or might never be needed. In the same way, if we apply that to our own life and we say, how much of your limited attention every single day are you allocating on tasks that will actually help you achieve more of the goals that are important to you, versus how many of your limited attention are being wasted doing things that are not really helping or might even be harming? And that to me is the second level of the real constraint or bottleneck, is these decisions that cause us to either waste our scarcest resource or to overcommit it. The third level is what sits below that. And those are the assumptions that we've made. So think about the bottleneck, Second level would be the bad decisions that's causing that bottleneck, that's causing the backlogs. And below those bad decisions are bad assumptions. And what we've seen is that these bad assumptions, it's probably better to not think of them as right or wrong, but rather think of the assumptions that we have as either helpful or harmful. They either help us to better exploit the scarce resource, to be able to do more of the work, achieve more of the goals that are important to us, or they harmful. They block us from doing that. A good example of that is the famous quote by Henry Ford when he said, whether you believe you can do something or you can't, you're right. Believing I can do something is a very helpful assumption or belief to have, because it means at least I will try. Believing I can't is not such a helpful assumption. It can even be harmful. And that's the way I like to think about how do I help organizations and individuals achieve their important goals as I take them through that levels of thinking. Where's the bottleneck currently in your environment? What's a scarce resource that if you had more of it, you could achieve more goals? What's the bad decisions that caused that to become a bottleneck? And then below those bad decisions, what are the assumptions that cause you to make and often repeat those bad decisions?